How to make a mixtape.
Now, the making of a good compilation tape is a very subtle art, many do's and don'ts. First of all, you're using someone else's poetry to express how you feel. This is a delicate thing. You gotta kick it off with a killer, grab attention. Then you gotta take it up a notch. But you don't want to blow your wad, so then you gotta cool it off a notch. And there are a lot of rules.
Hello, we're back at it. How to make... Oh, shit. Fucked up right at the beginning, Donnie. Well, this is How to Make a Mixtape podcast, if I can get it out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Right off the top, make sure you follow. If you don't already, make sure you're telling friends about it if you like it. We're gaining some traction, Donnie, and it feels good.
I saw some huge evening jumps. The worst thing you could have did was share analytics with me. It's like, it's a kind of a gross obsession. I'm still waiting for our first intergalactic listener, which, you know, I'll keep my fingers crossed for that one. I think the chances of that one happening are as good as the chances of Andre streams going up. So I'm still holding out for that.
I'm still holding out for Andre streams to go up. I think that's still a possibility.
Well,
we just got to keep talking about Andre, the seal.
I have tagged the girl from Andre, who's also Deb from Napoleon Dynamite, in 2 Instagram posts. Nothing back.
Well, you know, maybe persistence pays off. Maybe we don't give up on her the way we gave up on Sattva.
Oh, man, don't even get me started.
You know, right off the bat. Well, I'm Roderick. You're Donnie. I didn't even say our names. I'm all thrown off. Different recording time today. It's just got me bugging a bit.
What have you been listening to?
I'm glad you asked. You haven't asked the last couple episodes.
I know.
I busted your chops for it on one, and then you stopped asking when I actually had stuff I've been listening to. The new Gouge Away record is awesome. If people are into, I don't even know what to call it. It's like kind of hardcore, kind of like indie hardcore. They're really awesome. And then the other big one is there's this Australian like instrumental group I've been listening to called Glass Beams.
Okay.
And it's like, I think they're of Indian heritage, even though they're Australian. And so it's this like East meets West, really just cool, chill instrumental stuff. It's rad. It's legit. What about you?
So I went and saw Wednesday night, the Hot Club of Cowtown. You familiar?
Nope.
It's like a great like Americana folk group.
Okay.
At this tiny little venue called Fitzgerald's. It was friggin' awesome. It was a 3-piece. It's like an upright bass player, a fiddle player, and a guitar player. And they play like Americana, like good folk music. Like they cover Marty Robbins and shit like that. It was fantastic.
I went to see my sweetie last night. Moonlight night, the stars are shining bright. Felt romantic as I went through the gate to feel the lovely day.
And the sound in this tiny little closet of a venue was so good. So that was fantastic. And then yesterday, somebody put me on to Hail Long. Have you listened to this? It's like more or less like instrumental Viking music. Yeah, it's like sea shanties and shit, which I would just prefer to listen to Amon Amarth if I'm going to listen to crazy Viking metal. I don't know if you have any experience with Amon Amarth, but they will definitely end up on one of my metal mixtapes in the future.
Them I've heard of, at least.
Yeah.
But
they've been doing it for so long.
To
Amon Amarth?
Yeah.
All right, I'll quick sidebar and then we'll get into the business. If you get a chance, go on Amon Amarth's Instagram and look for them playing a song called Put Your Back Into the Oar, where it's like one of those awesome things where the singer gets the whole audience to sit down on the floor and they all row a boat together during the breakdown of the song.
You've told me about this before, or if it wasn't you, it was somebody else.
Dude,
I've been told that this is a thing.
So cool. Yeah.
That's rad.
I feel like you can smell that picture when you look at it. It's one of those type things.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're doing something different today. Kind of. We're kind of doing like an introduction to a genre theme today.
This was stressful.
It was hard.
Super hard.
I'm hoping this feels like one that like it'll be a regular thing, right? Like intro to like a subgenre or like a specific like niche like thing, which will make those hard to do.
I know, ska is still up for grabs.
I'm not trying to rush ska, Donnie.
You want
because I care
put
about
the
it.
most time into that one.
I legitimately care about it. And I don't want it to be a throwaway episode. Not that any of them are, but I don't want to rush it. I want to get a really solid guest, and I want to put the appropriate amount of time in it. And just because you threw out your ska band names and they're both beating mine on the poll doesn't mean we have to rush in to the ska episode.
What is your listener engagement like for people wanting to add their themes of mixtapes?
Pretty high. I'm being approached a lot by people with theme ideas, more so than song help for the themes, which I could have used more on this one, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
But theme ideas, big time.
I love it.
A lot of them are good. Most of them are good.
Absolutely love it. I love the theme contributions. Like if we're talking and you have listened and you have a great theme idea, the rolling Google Doc list just keeps getting longer and longer. And I love everybody that I've talked to's contribution around that. So
yeah, and I don't know what it looks like on the other formats. Like, this is on a ton of different podcast platforms, but on Spotify, if you listen on there, we put a question in every episode. So if you scroll down, there's a question. It's not always about the theme, but a few of them have been. So you can always go back to old episodes too and type that in there, because I check that stuff. I check those responses that we get.
You check the important stuff, like what are the listeners saying? I check whether or not anybody from Mercury has listened. So yeah, I mean, we both have the important stuff on.
Important roles. We both play our part on this.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm ready to just kind of get into this because I'm actually oddly nervous about this one.
I'm super nervous about this one. This one feels more high stakes than the rest of them.
And I don't know why. It's just a podcast where a bunch of dumb people get on here and talk about music they like. I mean, there's no stakes. Stakes is not high at all. Huh? Stakes is not high.
It's because you know what, Rod? It's because we care.
It is. It is because we care. And, I keep telling myself, like, I'm going to force myself to not put as much time into selecting songs because it's more about just the interaction, and whatever I pick, it's not like people are judging me really.
No,
or if they are,
every time.
The more time I spend isn't going to change how much I'm judged. That's a better way to say it.
That's true.
I guess. So I need to stop. But this time I put so much time into this. Like so much time.
Let's talk about that when we get the guest on, because I want to know what the process is. This is going to be a big learning episode for me because I don't feel as well versed in this genre as everybody else does. Maybe potentially as you and maybe our guest does. But like I want to
Alex
learn.
Trebek call out there.
Totally, it was
Mr. Trebek or genre.
So I want to learn like what are their qualifications that make it what the theme is? Why do they think that qualifies? Because we were talking before we jumped on about like every definition for this theme is different. So let's do the damn thing, dude.
Yeah, let's get them on so we can start talking about it and stop dangling the carrot in front of everybody's face.
How to make a mixtape.
All right. Our guest this episode is John Massel. He is currently in a couple bands that you should check out. So he's in Amusement, which is, how would you describe it? It's a punk band, right? I mean,
yeah, it's, I started it with a few guys here in Portland that I know. And what we're kind of doing is kind of a throwback to the Revolution Summer DC stuff. Kind of
OG emo stuff.
Yeah, mixed with a little bit of Dinosaur Jr. and Sonic Youth.
Is it out already, John? Do you already have content out to collect?
Yeah, we have two records or 2 7-inch singles that got released on the same day by 2 different labels. So Council Records in Chicago did 1 7-inch for us, and Extinction Burst in the Bay Area did one for us. And you can get those at either Council Records Bandcamp or Extinction Burst Bandcamp, or our Bandcamp, which is Amusement 2, the number 2 Bandcamp. And then we're working on an LP right now.
So a lot of new music coming.
A lot of new music from Amusement. And then my other band is called Spares, which you're probably going to get to, which I'm jumping the gun here. Sorry.
You're good.
Ruining it.
Flow. No, just flow. Yeah, you're in Spares also.
Yeah, so Spares started here in Portland too. It's members of a band from Boston called Youth League, and members of Lock and Key from Boston and Youth League from North Carolina. But we don't have anything out yet. But we're playing our first show next Friday here in Portland. So yeah, that's that. And then we're taking a break because I'm having a kid. So
yeah, so congrats on that. So
Thanks.
You're about to be a father, first time.
Mm-hmm.
That's
First
exciting.
kid.
Yep, first kid.
Any listeners who are listening to this the week it comes out, if you're in Portland, you can go see Spares' first show.
Yeah, it's at Hawthorne Hideaway, which if you live here in Portland, you'll know where that's at. It's on Hawthorne Street. But I don't know if many people will hear this that live in Portland. Anyway, yeah, we're excited. We're nervous as hell because it's different for all of us. We're kind of doing more, it's more, I guess, mathy, Drive Like Jehu. Songs take a long time to write.
Yeah.
And figure out.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting though.
Yeah.
And I like some of those bands that you're dropping the influence for. We were trying to figure out last time, you think it's been 12 years since you and I saw each other.
It has to be. I feel like it has to, because
you were playing in Shores at the time, and so we would play shows together. That's how I know you. And yeah, I can't remember. That was a long time ago.
But yeah, that's how we met, and it was a lot of fun. I have good memories of those shows for sure.
Me too.
Rod was saying you've played for damn near everybody, John. Who are some of the other bands you've played for? So we got Shores.
Shit.
We got
So from my past, I was in a band called North Lincoln that did some records on No Idea. So that started in '98, and then during that period, I played with Mustard Plug, which everybody knows.
Dude,
I did 1 year in Mustard Plug, and then I did a kind of like a power violence hardcore thrasher band called Don Knotts. And then I did a band before I moved out here to Portland called Prison Suicide. And then I was in a band. Yeah, and then I was in a band when I first moved out here in Portland. I was in a band called Bothers. Trying to think of what else I've done. It feels like there's a lot.
Sounds like damn near everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that the full-time gig, John? Full-time musician?
No, I wish.
Yeah.
I wish.
That's always the dream.
I'm a digital marketing guy for a startup company. So
nice.
There you go.
Hey, we've all got day jobs. We've all got something we got to do to pay the bills. Well, I'll just say, you're a hell of a drummer.
Thanks.
I always loved watching you play. I wish I lived on the West Coast and I could go see your new bands, but maybe you guys will tour at some point.
I'm sure, well, we'll see now that I have a kid on the way, like it's going to make
that's true
doing stuff like that a little more difficult, but
that will. So we talked about like your kind of punk and hardcore roots and background here. So what's the theme that we're doing this episode, John?
So the theme we're doing today is backpack rap.
Yeah. So not punk or hardcore at all.
I know.
Not at all.
Everybody was on the edge of their seat hoping it's a Scatastrophe episode, but
it's not
yet.
ska. It's not
yet.
No.
Not yet. Yeah, I think when you hit me up about doing this and you gave me the kind of a list of, ideas of stuff we could do, you'd mentioned that there'd been a lot of like rock oriented stuff and indie or whatever it may be. And you're like, it'd be cool to do a hip hop episode because that, you follow me on social media. So that I post a lot of hip hop songs. And the reason for that is like my first love was hip hop. It wasn't rock music. Well, I guess it was rock music when I was really young as a kid, but like my own thing outside of my parents' taste that I first got into was hip hop. And I have a strong passion. And it was like I got into it at the right moment. In the early 90s, well, yeah, let's say back 89, 90, when rap started kind of getting into the mainstream, it was because of MC Hammer, which is very pop oriented rap. It feels safer to middle America, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like a guy in Kansas or like a dad in Kansas seeing his kids watch the You Can't Touch This video, it seems it's a little bit more safe for white America, essentially. Now, the flip side to that was what we're talking about today, which is like the true underground, like the gritty stuff that I mean, granted, as a kid, I liked Criss Cross and MC Hammer, but I quickly lost.
Oh God, you're after Rod's heart. You're after Rod's clothes turning around heart with that one.
We've discussed on this podcast that I once wore my clothes backwards to school.
No way, you did that
because of
yeah,
Criss
he
Cross.
did it.
Yeah, I did that.
I thought about I honestly I remember watching them play or do their performance on In Living Color. And I remember going into school the next day and seeing a bunch of kids with their clothes backwards. And I tried to do it. I tried to leave. I tried.
Yeah.
I tried. But I tried when I was leaving the house. My dad was like, absolutely not.
You see, you had to. I changed.
You had
in
to
the
change
bathroom.
at school.
Yeah,
you had to change at school,
I
John.
leave,
that's where you missed it.
I didn't leave the house that way. I changed when I got to school, and then I also assumed the teachers told me to go right back in and turn it right back around. But I remember doing it. So what was your process then? Because, and I think Donnie and I will kind of talk about ours too, but we're probably coming from different places. Like you were saying, you had just a massive list of stuff going into this.
I'm trying to think I was trying to think about this all week. What was my first introduction into this type of this era of hip hop? And I think what it was, do you remember the show Donahue? The talk show Donahue?
Yeah.
So my mom watched it religiously, and it was 89. It had to be 89. So it was when Two Live Crew had all the controversy going around with As Nasty as They Want to Be.
Yeah,
and
introduction of the parental advisory sticker. That's what started it, right?
One of the things it was
that and Twisted Sister. Weren't those the two?
Wasp, the Annibal Puff Like a Beast record by Wasp. That was the big one. So yeah, it was that was the big thing. The PMRC was starting that, and Two Live Crew, like you said, was the one that they really wanted to go after. But yeah, she would watch Donahue all the time, and I saw Two Live Crew on there, and I just thought it sounded so cool. And so that sparked my interest. But then also seeing MC Hammer and stuff like that on MTV kind of led me down that path. But the thing that was really pivotal to it was I went to a record store with my dad, because my dad he bought records when my parents were pretty young. So my dad bought records at this record store, and I went with him one day, and he was like, you can get one thing, whatever you want. And he probably thought I was going to buy MC Hammer. And I still clearly remember this. I went up to the counter with Please Hammer, Don't Hurt Him, put it on the counter, and the teenager or 18-year-old kid working the counter at that time, saw it. And he's like, you don't want this. And he's like, follow me. And he brought me to the rap section. And he's like, you want this. And he gave me It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back by Public Enemy. So that was the first cassette I bought with my own, quote unquote, my own money.
That is the coolest record store employee of all time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand what Chuck D was talking about at all as a fucking 8-year-old in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I didn't understand any of it, but it completely changed my mind, and that kind of just opened it up. And then from there I started buying The Source, and I started reading The Source, and just kind of devouring everything that came on Rap City, and then discovering MTV Raps, and that was my first love.
Man, you got into really good hip hop early on, because it took me a lot longer. I don't know about you, Donnie, but I mean, I stuck in my MC Hammer phase for a lot longer. And it wasn't necessarily MC Hammer. I mean, I had him. I had, Don't Hurt Him or whatever. Yeah. I had Chris. It was Tag Team. It was it was the Midwest white safe hip hop stuff that you would hear on the radio and see on regular MTV at first. It took me a lot longer to get into anything really
subversive,
underground, so
I still the pop rap stuff, but towards the 92, 91, Dre started releasing singles from the Chronic. That line that we're talking about between the pop world of rap and the underground world of rap, that's when it kind of started shifting.
So John, do you put Dre and Snoop and all of that stuff? If we're going to say, and I guess we can talk a little bit about the definition of backpack rap, because to me, when we start talking Dre and Snoop, that's the intro of gangster rap to mainstream America. Yeah, that is where shit gets way less activism, way less this is current affairs. And now we're talking about how hard shit is for those guys.
Yeah.
And I think it's a way different, I don't know, maybe it's a different subgenre in my mind. Cause I mean, as a lame white dude, I'm like Googling backpack rap to see like, you know, what are some of like the criteria of what make these artists fall into that. So I don't know, what's your perspective on backpack rap versus gangster rap? Or I guess what was your criteria?
You know, NWA made with Fuck the Police in like 88 kind of made gangster rap, put it on the radar of a lot of media people. But it wasn't until the early 90s with Dre and everything that it really became like a focus. And I would say that the gangster rap sound is completely different from the backpack sound, because the gangster rap sound is a primarily West Coast, mostly Southern California West Coast sound that's heavily influenced by Parliament Funkadelic. So it's got like a funky, it feels like when you listen to something, when you listen to like a, either like a gangster rap record, like a Dre or something like that, it feels very sunny and California. It feels like California. It feels like Southern California. A
ton of funk, right? If you listen to Doggy Style's damn near a funk album more than it is a gangster rap album for sure.
100%. And it's just the content that they're talking about that makes it what it is, right? Now, backpack rap, which some West Coast guys could fall into this, just like Souls of Mischief, who are from Oakland, California. They put out 93 Till Infinity. They fit the term because it's very, if you listen to the music, it's very jazz influenced. The drums sound very smoky. It's the term that people started using was boom bap to describe backpack, quote unquote, backpack rap. So we could say backpack rap or boom bap, which is kind of like the sound of the drum loop, or, you know, it's very jazz influenced, less funk, more focused on like, it feels like New York. Like the quintessential thing I say to people is like, if you listen to Nas's Illmatic, there's no way to not picture yourself in a subway station in New York City when you hear that record. It sounds like New York.
One of the better definitions I found online, which by the way, if anybody's listening that disagrees and thinks backpack rap is something different, that's because there's a million different like versions.
Hard.
Like some people call like the mid 2000s like the backpack era, like Childish Gambino and like that stuff, B.O.B. and stuff, but that's not backpack rap, I guess. It's like the backpack era, which is a different thing. I'm not sure. But I read a definition and the dude was like, look, it's dudes in New York City who carry their entire life in a backpack. Their graffiti cans, their mixtapes, their demos, they trade that shit. Yeah. They live on the street. They rap about the street. They go digging through dollar bin or 50-cent bin record crates, right? And they put that shit in their backpack. That becomes the samples that they use, which is why they're using these obscure jazz samples, these obscure, you know, whatever world music samples or whatever they find, right? That one made a lot of sense to me. I'm like, that makes total sense. Like your life's on your back, everything that's important to you. So when you do start rapping, what your lyrics are going to be about is life and probably the art form a little bit, and not some of that big major, you know, pop rap level stuff that's like hoes and money and how many cars I've got and stuff. So,
yeah. I mean, in 92, there was a group that I really liked. Their record wasn't that great, but they had one single that was really good. And it was called Check the Backpack. And it's by this group called the Rough House Survivors. And it's literally all about like, the chorus is, yo, I need a rhyme. Come check my backpack. And it's like about how they live. Like you said, their life is in the backpack. They just traveled New York City and they had all their stuff in their backpack.
Their lyrics book is back there. They're constantly, right? They're on a bus, they're on a train, they're writing in their book. Like, so I don't know. How do you feel about your list now, Donnie, after hearing John talk about it and having this discussion?
Fine, I guess. You know, like it's crazy because you get a different definition from every person you ask. And it doesn't matter who you ask and what you ask them. If you ask them to define backpack rap, you're going to get a different definition. Yeah. You know, if you ask a 20-year-old kid what backpack rap is, you're going to get something similar. Like they're going to say old Kanye's backpack rap, you know, like,
oh yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? I want to get into our actual songs here. So real quick, I'm going to read through the kind of mixtape guidelines here, and then we're going to get into it. So number 1, you got to have a killer opening track that grabs the listener's attention. Number 2, each song should flow smoothly into the next, creating a seamless listening experience. Number 3, the mixtape should have a good balance of different genres, tempos, and moods. Variety keeps things interesting. That one does not apply to this episode. The mixtape should tell a story, convey a specific emotion. It should take the listener on a journey. Number 5, it can't be too obvious, but can't be too obscure either, unless that's the theme. you can't double up on songs by the same artist. That one I feel like is going to be important on this episode. And then the closing track should leave a lasting impression and make the listener crave more. And you're going to be putting these in an order after the episode, John. So that's going to be on you to open strong, close strong,
Sequence the mixtape.
That's right.
I can do it.
So do you want to go first or do you want to go third in the rotation?
I'll go third.
Awesome.
Dang,
That's the first
one.
Donnie. That's a first.
one.
I'll go third.
And then if that's the case, Rod, it's you because I went second last time.
Oh, man. So I'm kicking things off, huh?
You're kicking things off.
All right.
Don't shit the bed, Rod.
Well, this is the one I'm the most confident on anyway. Well, I think. Whatever. I'm going with it. It's interesting that you said already, John, that it's the New York vibe. I totally agree. But that there is some West Coast stuff. Because I'm going with... I am going with a West Coast rapper right off the bat. But Del the Funky Homo Sapien, Mr. Dabalina.
Mr. Dabalina, Mr. Bob Dabalina, Mr. Bob Dabalina, won't you quit? You really make me sick with your fraudulent behavior. You're gonna make me flip and then an army couldn't save you. Why don't you behave, you little rugrat?
Great song. Great.
It's that whole sound. It's that whole like Hieroglyphics crew sound. It's that boom bap thing. They've got that, right? Like that you brought up Souls of Mischief already. It's that same crew. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. I was actually reading that like apparently that Souls of Mischief record. So that whole thing that group of guys were doing was even really influential on like DJ Premier and some of those like East Coast producers and stuff,
When the Hyro crew started doing their stuff, mostly Del, because Del got the start first because he's Ice Cube's cousin. I don't know if you know this.
I did know that, which is wild, but yeah.
So he got the start first. So he put on his friend, his crew. Most of the dudes in New York at the time in the early 90s, when they think of Oakland, they think of Too Short. So when they heard Souls of Mischief, they couldn't believe that they were from Oakland. They were like, same with Cypress Hill. When I first heard Cypress Hill, I thought they were from fucking New York. Turns out they're from LA because they were making music that sounded really New York. But anyway.
It's funny. Like I watched some footage of Del like early on in his career. Actually footage of this song of like him rapping Mr. Dabalina, and like he looks like a West Coast Oakland rapper, right? He's dressed, which makes sense. You're gonna wear what people around you wear, but he's got the like, I don't remember exactly if this is the case, but it's like a Raiders hat and like a black windbreaker, right? Like he looks like Ice Cube's cousin. They look like they're gonna be gangster rap, but it's not. It's that total jazz soul influenced thing. What I like about Del specifically is, to me, not enough rappers at that time, and I know they want to be taken seriously as an art form, they were still battling for like people to take their art form seriously, so I get it, but Del had humor. Like Del was funny. Del was a weirdo, and I kind of like that, right? It wasn't always so serious all the time. Like he would say some goofy shit in his lines, right? Like he made a sci-fi record later, right? With 3030.
That crew too, when you started, skateboarding culture in hip hop, it probably was always there, but since it's in California, that's when you start getting, you look at the Hyro crew, I think of skating, like a lot of skateboarding, a lot of like hanging out and smoking weed and drinking 40s and just skating and listening to hip hop records, right? So that
makes sense. And I hadn't really thought about that, but that makes perfect sense. And I'm thinking back to some of the like the videos and the clips I was watching of those guys, and I'm pretty sure that they were even skating, or some people in their crew were skating, and they were also just young. Yeah. So they're acting like fucking kids, because they were basically they were kids, or at least early on, right? And then they obviously, they kept going, but it's also wild how big Del got, like with the Gorillas, like, all that stuff. Donnie, we saw Del once. Do you remember in Seattle? Yeah. Fuck. I actually hadn't remembered until just this second.
Bowling alley.
In a bowling alley.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wait. Was he performing or just like bowling?
No, performing. We saw him perform in a bowling alley. In like outside of Seattle, like years and years ago. But
that's rad.
But yeah, so that's my first choice, Del. All right, Donnie, pressure's on.
Yeah, for sure. So my first contribution is Hip Hop by Dead Prez.
One thing about music, when it hit, you feel no pain. White folks said controls your brain. I know better than that. That's game, man. We ready for that.
Fucking great.
Yeah, it was one of those songs where, like, as I started to research, like, again, I have enough gangster rap knowledge, I think, and I'm like, all right, now I'm digging into backpack rap, and I'm like, you know, doing some of like the easy stuff, Googling and looking into Spotify playlists, and I start to look into what some of the stuff was, and I'm like, shit, man, I remember this song like in the early 2000s. It came out in 99, but I remember this song in like the early 2000s when I kind of started to get my hands on it. And I'm like, that bass line, that warped bass line that kicks off that track is just immediately recognizable. And it's one of those songs that I just feel like that one to me is one that is a complete vibe of a song versus just a great track.
100%.
That duet of Dead Prez and what those dudes do is, I think it, you know, I look at those guys as like quintessential backpack rappers for sure.
Yeah, they're definitely from that scene for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just one of those songs that I think that it kind of goes timeless as well. If this came out right now, it would still be big versus it coming out in 99. If this came out now, it would still carry as much value as it did then. So
I think that song, that whole record, what is the record called? We Shall Be Free, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Let's Get Free.
Let's Get Free, yeah. That whole record is fucking incredible.
They've got that whole like, and I feel like a lot of what we're going to talk about today is that stuff, but it kind of goes back to what I was saying with a lot of the backpack rap stuff is also subject matter based, right? Like they're very social justice, conscious, you know, conscious. It's conscious rap. Like this is like one of the poster groups for that movement. So this totally fits, and hip hop was heavily mainstream at that point. There's even more reason for groups like this to come out that isn't Mace and Puff Daddy or whatever. Like, that was in their like shiny suits.
Like after 95, 96, Puffy and Bad Boy was blowing up, and just hip hop became, or what was known as hip hop in the popular scope was becoming, I don't know, it was just kind of boring. It wasn't good. To me, it wasn't good. It was just like, especially when you listen to like those Bad Boy records and they're just literally lifting a whole hook of a song, like basically the whole song and just rapping over it. Like if you listen to like Dead Prez's record, whoever did the production on that guy slaved over the samples to make sure the samples were in the right spot and like made his own loops. Or if he stole a drum loop, he like sliced that shit up to make what he was doing. Whereas Puffy and those dudes were just like, so we're just going to take, let's just take that whole song and just rap over it. There's no art in that, I don't think.
He did that a lot. He did that in a lot of stuff.
And he shamelessly did it.
Yeah. I don't know why I can't get the image out of my head now, but that whole like really shiny suits in music videos was a thing then. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, not like, I mean, it wasn't like sequence. They're just like shiny material, right? And like silver and I don't know. That stuff was wild. So it was
like Mace and Puffy did a video like that. Even Biggie did a video like that with Puffy before Biggie passed. And it was all shot in fisheye.
Yeah, it was all the Hype Williams. Wasn't it all Hype Williams videos?
That's it.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was all Hype Williams videos. But like at the same time, he was still doing like the Missy stuff, which was like crazy artistic. So like it was crazy because he was doing like that mainstream like arena bullshit stuff, but then he was doing like, I mean, it's this. I guess you go the same direction with what producers were doing at the time, because Timberland was doing some of that shit, but then Timberland was also doing like I listened to, I don't know, was it 60 songs that talked about just the crickets in Superfly by Missy Elliott, and like that shit is nuts. Like where you're talking about production, like that is going down the rabbit hole of like where the crickets fall in the song. So
or like what's that? He did that song for Aaliyah. I can't.
Are You That Somebody with the baby?
Yes. Like who? Like what producer is going to sit around and go like he's got a beat going and he's like, you know what's going to make this really the hook of the song is going to be a baby cooing. That's going to be the hook of the song.
That's a good pick, Donnie.
John, we're off to you, man. Your first pick, the first guest to pick third.
This is tough. Since we brought up like, you know, Timbaland doing weird, like the crickets and the baby cooing, I'm going to have to go for my first pick is a MC called J. Rue the Damager, and the song is called Come Clean.
Got a freaky flow. Control the mic like Fidel Castro. Like Cuba, so deep that you can scuba dive. My job's origin is unknown. Like the tubas, I've accumulated honeys all across the map.
It's produced by DJ Premier from Gangstar. And this beat also has a very interesting, I don't know, I would say maybe is the hook. It's just a very simple drum pattern or drum loop, but the hook of the song is mic'd up water droplets. So it's a water drop backbeat.
I got to tell you, John, my next pick was going to be a J. Rue the Damages song.
It was
going to be, I was going to pick One Day, but I'm glad he's on the list. That's all I care about.
Yeah.
He's on the list.
Come Clean. I remember vividly seeing the video on Rap City, and I'd heard of J. Rue the Damager because earlier that year, Gangstar had put out Hard to Earn. So he guests on that, and then he guests on Hard to Earn. And then later in 94, he releases his own solo record. And so I knew who he was, but then the song starts off with just the water drop sample, and then the beat kicks in. And I was like, okay, are we going to get any more out of this beat? And it's like, after a while, you're listening to it and you're like, I don't need anything more. Because once he starts rapping over it, it's like, it's great. It's like, it's one of my favorite DJ Premier productions. And he's probably, everybody that basically produced Illmatic are my top producers of all time. Premier, especially this beat, is just, I still listen to this and it's still good. I'm never tired of it. But yeah, it was hard. Like, I'm looking at my list and I'm like, I'm going to go with Come Clean. I feel like he definitely needs to be talked about as one of the best MCs of all time. There's a line in Come Clean that's so fucking good. He's like, something about, I'll tap your jaw. I also kick like Kung Fu Flicks by Run Run Shaw.
I'll tap your jaw. I also kick like Kung Fu Flicks by Run Run Shaw.
Like, that whole couplet is just so good. Like how he raps Jaw with Run Run Shaw.
Yeah.
And how it works together. It's so good. It's so good.
He had a lot of beef with Big Boy. We were just talking about Puffy and that whole crew. Like,
Bad Boy?
He like the whole he called Bad Boy out a lot for being basically like
sellouts.
I don't think he was going after talent as much as it was subject matter. He's like, you guys don't rap about anything important at all. You're just printing money at this point. You're no different than like pop music. And he called, like, specifically calls out Diddy, whatever he went by at the time, Puff Daddy probably at the time, right? He specifically calls out Puff Daddy and like Foxy Brown in a song, like by name. And like, which is kind of, I know that's a thing in hip hop, but still it was even then a little ballsy. Like, he wasn't hinting at who they were. He straight up was like, no.
I get what he's like. A lot of those dudes, when the Bad Boy thing blew up, like a lot of the underground guys, Puffy and those dudes were just rapping about like, I got so much money, look at my car, let's drink Cristal. And why, like, I get where, I don't have a horse in this race because as a white guy, I can't relate to it, but I get where J. Rue and all those guys are coming from. Like, how is this reflecting what's going to better our community?
Yeah.
John, let me ask you a heavy question. Mm-hmm. If Biggie doesn't die, does Diddy, and take the current affairs bullshit of Diddy out of it, does Diddy go in the same direction if Biggie doesn't die?
100%.
Because I think you think Diddy would have gone in the same direction.
100%.
Even if Biggie was still around, I don't know that Biggie would have let it happen.
No, Biggie was. If you look at like the last few videos that Biggie did, he was starting to go down that.
Dude, I didn't even think about that. You're totally right. Yep, you're totally right.
He wanted to make hip hop seem like it was underground, but yet still as popular and as consumable and palatable as R&B was. You know what I'm saying? So like so you could have a hip hop song that felt kind of underground on the radio next to a Mary J song or a Keith Sweat song, let's say. So there's no difference. But that's definitely, Puffy had that vision forever, so it's definitely going to go that way.
You're totally right.
And I will never trash Biggie because Biggie is obviously arguably one of the top 5 greatest MCs of all time. Like, his turn of phrase, his cadence, his voice, he's just an impeccable MC. Like, there's very few that can touch him. So anyway.
It's my turn now.
It's
back
you, Roderick. What do you got?
I've got Doomsday by MF Doom.
That's an audio daily double. Rappers need to fall off just to save me the trouble. Yo, watch your own back, came in and go out alone, black. Stay in the zone, turn H2O to cognac. On Doomsday, ever since the womb till I'm back where my brother went, that's what my tumor say.
does it all himself. He produces his own records. He writes it, like it's all him, which is very like that vibe, that like backpack thing. Like I'm going to do it all. I'm going to crate dig. I'm going to find the samples. I'm going to fucking sample Sesame Street, or I'm going to sample, Godzilla. Literally anything can be a sample.
Yeah.
I'll find it from wherever. I'm not even smart enough to get into what makes him such a genius lyricist and such a unique rapper with his cadence and the way he flows. Like I still don't even fully understand when I'm listening to him, what he's doing sometimes, but I can tell that it's completely unique to him, the way he does that stuff.
He is and this is not just my opinion, but a lot of like, guys like hip hop heads that are like nerds like me that dig into this shit. He is hip hop personified. He is the definition of it. He is one of the greatest that's ever lived. He's flawless. His records are incredible. A lot of the guys that we're talking about are inspired. Their favorite MC of all time is Rakim, who is quite possibly, he'll go down as top 2 or top 3 MCs of all time. Like the guy is fucking incredible. When I saw Rakim talking about MF Doom and how good MF Doom was and how Rakim was inspired by MF Doom, and then to have Rakim break down MF Doom's bars and go, the way Rakim broke it down was like the guy was on a whole other level that no one could touch.
I mean, is there a bigger compliment than when when you pass away, you're so unique and beloved that another incredibly beloved, famous artist goes on tour just doing your songs, like Mos Def. Now, Yasin Bey, he's literally doing entire shows of nothing but MF Doom songs. Yeah, it's just MF Doom because Doom's gone and can't do it himself anymore. And basically, like wants this music to live on. He thinks that MF Doom is the number one greatest, of all time. And he's like literally touring right now, like doing his, like, can you imagine that happening with another artist? Honestly, like, can you think of another artist that on their own is massive and would do a whole, not like a cover of a song, right? Or not perform one, but I'm only going to do this other band or artists or whatever songs because they deserve to be heard. That's nuts to me. You know what I mean?
To have someone like Mos Def go out and do, your shit. He doesn't have a band behind him. That's like the highest compliment in the world. It's one person doing your shit.
That's how I look at it. I can't think of a better compliment than that.
And the song, I know we got sidetracked, but the song you chose by Doom was Doomsday.
Yeah, it was Doomsday.
Yeah, it's got the Sade sample in it.
The Sade. Yeah. I just wanted to go with like it's the first song on the first, I mean, there's an intro on the first record, but it's the first actual like song on the first Doom record. Like you could pick a million, I have a different Doom record as my favorite record and all that stuff. But this was like the introduction to Doom, and it's like a perfect introduction into what he is. It's everything that makes him great. It's got such a strange flow. It's got like great samples. It's got the whole vibe that his stuff has, the jazzy kind of soul thing going on. It does follow some like samples too. Sorry, the intro is also like, I forget what the intro samples, but it's some like TV show or cartoon or something that goes right into this. So that's very quintessential fitting. Doom, right?
Yeah, very fitting. Did you say your favorite? Would your favorite Doom record be Mad Villainy, the one that he did with?
Well, are we counting his other alter egos as Doom records too?
Okay, yeah, we can do it all.
I mean, the King Ghidra record's my favorite.
Oh, that's a good one too.
It's just a personal thing. I mean, probably Mad Villainy for a straight Doom record. They're all great. I mean, they're all great. I just, for some reason, I have a connection to that King Ghidra record.
That's good. Yeah. I always put him in, not that they're anything alike, but they're both so unique that I've always put them in the same category together, is Kool Keith and MF Doom. They're both so unique and both do so many different alter egos, and they're just very much in their own lane, and they're not going to change that lane for anything. They're going to do their shit.
Yep. So I kind of wanted to get him out there before somebody else took him.
That was a smart move.
He's my favorite. So, but yeah, Donnie, on to you.
All right, dude. Well, I mean, that's going to be a tough one to jump back into something, but like mine's a little bit newer, and it's a bit on the nose, but I'm okay with it. And it's Backpack Freestyle by Kendrick.
Goddamn, I feel amazing. Damn, I'm in the matrix. My mind is living on cloud nine, and this 9 is no
on racing. Popping pills in the lobby, and I pray they don't find her naked.
Oh, nice.
So album came out in 2012, which was the Good Kid, Mad City album. Mm-hmm. And I was hoping that this was going to be the second wave of really great lyrically based mainstream hip hop. Like, I guess I shouldn't say main. I mean, Kendrick is as mainstream as it gets. But I was excited. I guess I'll put it this way. This is a better way to put it. I was excited to see really good hip hop of substance come back around because I felt like there was a serious lull in good hip hop for a minute, maybe late 2008s, 9s, 10s. And I probably was just listening to the wrong shit. So it's probably more on me than it is on my collection of information. But I feel like this, when Kendrick started, and it wasn't his first album. His first album was Section 80 that came out in 2011. But this album specifically that was in 2012, the Good Kid album, this album was like, holy shit,
I love
man.
This album,
there is
dude.
a glimmer of hope.
Top to bottom, great record.
There is a glimmer of hope for what I know what my collection of good hip hop was when this album came out. I was like, oh my God, there's a chance. There's a chance that we're not going the direction that I will continue to go down, which unfortunately there's just so much bad shit out there right now. But like Kendrick, in my opinion, was like, okay, this might mean that there's good hip hop still out there that still breaks its way into the mainstream. Yeah.
I think you weren't wrong saying like, well, popular hip hop wise, like that period of time was kind of, there wasn't really much that was, it was all like, it wasn't a guy coming up there, like you said, spitting bars that were fucking great and had like actual substance to them. There wasn't that in the popular realm of hip hop. There will always be an underground. There will always be one, and it's just harder to find. But like to have a popular MC come out that's harkening back to Eminem's, you know, who's I think the last like true big, like, you know, I wouldn't say last true big hip hop superstar, but like, you know, that's from what I last remember really focusing on hip hop was like Eminem was like huge, you know, like that. And he was actually spitting bars and he was actually really good. And I think Kendrick is that same thing. He kind of brought that back, which, like you said, was sorely missing from popular hip hop.
Totally. And like, what's crazy is that if you look, so I picked Backpack Freestyle because it's just the most hype song on that album. And if you have any kind of car stereo, you put this song on, this shit is so loud. The production of this song is so good. It hits so fucking hard. But like when you guys were talking with Doom as far as lyrics and what like lyricists, people that build out lyrics, have you guys ever heard the song Nostalgia by Kendrick and Pusha T?
What album is that on?
It's on a Pusha T album. I don't remember the name of the Pusha T album that it's on, but it's called Nostalgia is the name of the track. And if you look at the number lore of Kendrick's verse in this song, where he is talking, it's a story about both Kendrick and Pusha T selling crack like in the projects back in the day.
Yeah.
And in Kendrick's verse, he starts to talk about like 9 times equals 10 times you're out of luck. And if you do the math behind everything that he says, it equals 36, which is an ounce.
Holy shit.
In terms of selling crack. And then if you like at the end, he says, keep track of everything. Every verse is a brick because each one of them has 36 parts to their rap within the song. And each one is fucking fantastic. It's not my song.
He won a Pulitzer Prize. Like you don't win a Pulitzer Prize, like unless you're a genius writer, you know what I mean? And like, I think he fits in this because, I mean, he's definitely got that like conscious rap. He's an interesting one because he's such a storyteller and he is from Compton and he does have a lot of that like gangster rap thing just because he talks about his life. But
well, I mean, his folks were from fucking Chicago. They moved to Compton in '84. His parents grew up on the South Side.
Really?
So like, his fucking dad is like a pretty high up in the gangster disciples and shit was in Chicago. And so when they moved to Compton and then Kendrick was, I think he was born shortly thereafter. Like, he's got a fucking story to tell for sure.
All right, John, what do you got?
So following in your MF Doom thing, I have a song from the group Third Base. The song's called The Gas Face.
Black cat is bad luck. Bad guys wear black. Must have been a white guy who started all that. Make the gas face. For those little white lies, my expression to the mountain is blue eyes dip on my face and shake my skull cap.
and it actually features Zev Love X, who would become of KMD, who would become MF Doom. And the Gas Face came out on their record, the Cactus album, back in '89. And it was one of the early hip hop songs I ever heard. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Third Base at all. MC Church, Pete Nice.
What was their single? They had a big single.
Pop Goes the Weasel.
That's what it was. Hell yeah.
Yep. That song's all about hip hop becoming pop. So like Vanilla Ice and MC Hammer. There's even a reference at the end of the Gas Face, because like the term Gas Face came up when, you know, Search and Zev Love and all the dudes from KMD would go to the mall and try to pick up girls, and the girls would give them like that get away from me face. They called that the ooh face. They called it the gas face. And at the end of the song, they start listing people who get the gas face, and one of them, Search, says, "What do we think about Hammer?" Ooh, and they start ripping on Hammer and shit. So they've always been about like ripping on the hip hop going pop. So yeah, their big single was Pop Goes the Weasel. So yeah, Third Base, Gas Face is one of probably the earliest, like the Cactus album by Third Base was probably maybe the 5th rap tape I bought. It's from '89. So it's very, you know, early stages golden era. So it's, the production's still pretty gritty, raw, or whatever. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's one of my favorite records. I don't own a lot of hip hop stuff on LP, like vinyl, mostly on cassette and stuff like that. But that's one of the few that I actually have the LP of.
Man, young MC Search looks just like Elvis Costello.
Isn't it wild?
It's so much like Elvis. It's so weird seeing what looks to be Elvis Costello on a hip hop album cover.
Yeah. Are you looking at the cover of Cactus album?
It's not the cover of Cactus album, because you can't really. Oh yeah, it's the back of his head. So Third Base is you know, on the back of his head. No, but their best of record on the cover of that is straight up just looks like Elvis Costello.
So I was a big fan of Third Base, and Third Base, really roundabout way here. Search was the one that brought Nas to the attention of the A&R woman at Columbia Records, who eventually signed Nas, which there was another song I was going to include in my list. Main Source, who was Large Professor's group, they did a song in '91 called Live at the Barbecue, and that's the first recorded appearance of Nas on a record. And his first verse is, "I'm waving automatic guns at nuns," and shit like that. And so like Search heard that and was like, this kid's insane, got his demo somehow, or met with Large Professor. I don't know how it worked, but he brought him to the attention of Columbia. And so that's how Nas got signed to Columbia.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Rod and I have talked about how we kind of collect information as we go through this. So like we're both kind of frantically Googling shit. And as we were talking about MC Search, and in 2018, he gave an interview with DJ Vlad in which he claimed MC Hammer had once taken a $50,000 contract out on his life.
That is true.
Following a misunderstanding over lyrics.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much of this stuff you know, John. Like, I just don't have the brain to contain this amount of information.
These are
like
deep.
I'm envious of people like you who just know this shit. Donnie and I have a friend.
I'm a nerd.
Actually, Donnie's kind of like this too. I've been in the car with Donnie, Donnie can name the song title and artist of like every single thing that comes on any radio station. It kind of blows my fucking mind, but I don't know how you guys do that shit. So to move things along, I'll go into my third here. So my third pick, I'm actually already pulling audibles in this. This wasn't in my top 4. Now I'm changing my mind. So I decided to go with Mathematics by Mos Def.
It's a numbers game, but shit don't add up somehow. Like I got 16 to 32 bars to rock it, but only 15% of profits ever seen my pockets. Like 69 billion in the last 20 years spent on national defense, but folks still live in fear. Like nearly half of America's largest cities is 1/4 black. That's why they gave Ricky Ross all the crap.
Great.
Yeah, I here's the audible. I was going to do a Black Star song. So it's like, do I want to do Black Star? Do I want to do Mos? I'll tell you what changed my mind is I actually watched a YouTube video last night about Souls of Mischief, actually.
Oh, no
and
shit.
They talked at the end about how influential the production on that Souls of Mischief record was, specifically to Mos Def. And I guess he specifically called out this album, so Black on Both Sides. So I really like this song. I love this record. I love Mos Def. I don't really know what else to say about that. Right?
Yeah,
Like he's got one of the most unique voices, like his flow, his voice, it's his thing, right? Everybody knows like he's a very conscious rapper. He's very much about the importance behind every word that he says on every song, right? He's not just going to throw shit out there. And I very much appreciate that. Like same thing with Black Star, right? And Talib, but he also just seems like a good fucking dude, which also makes me want to put him on here, honestly. Like the dude seems awesome. He's funny too. Like, I mean, as an actor, he's funny. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but like, you know, like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Be Crying to Rewind, like that shit. So
I think if you want to be like a memorable MC, you got to have like a good persona, right? Him and Talib, when they do Black Star together, that combination and that record alone is just, it's one of those records. When I first heard it, I was like, it's one of the perfect hip hop records of all time, Black Star. And then I was working at a record store when Black on Both Sides came out, and we wore that fucker out.
I was gonna say this song does some similar things, maybe not to the level of what Kendrick did in that song you were talking about, Donnie, with the numbers. But I mean, this song is basically about Black people avoiding becoming like a statistic in white America, like a white America statistic, right? Like when they're throwing out the shit about like what, you know, Black people this, or like how many people are, you know, all that shit. He's like, it's like, don't become a statistic, but he's using a lot of numbers and a lot of actual statistics to like prove his points in this. Like the dude is just knowledgeable, incredible, and clever, and just such a good fucking rapper. It
takes a really intelligent, like it takes a brilliant mind to be able to take a subject like that, where it's using statistics and everything, and then put it into something that's lyrical and catchy and make listenable, because and
make it work. Exactly, make it listenable. Yeah.
You could make a song with a beat behind it and throw statistics at me, and it's going to be boring as shit. I'm not going to listen terrible. To it. Yeah, but coming from him with talent and like persona and the way that he's able to do it, and like you said, like you watch him in movies and you're like, I want to be friends with this guy.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Well, I have to change my weekend plans now, because I was going to just throw some statistics freeform style on a beat and send them to you, John.
There you go.
But,
I was looking forward to that.
Yeah, you know, sorry, Donnie, you don't get to hear that now. John just made me feel like a doofus for doing that. But no, it's cool. And he does do some of that. Like the statistics rise the whole time. Like he starts with the small statistic. That's a hard word to say. Ends with the biggest. So like there's a flow to it. It's getting more and more intense as he talks about it throughout the song. I'm a white dude talking about this, but I can still appreciate these things. I understand what he's saying. In fact, I would argue people like him are super important for like white youth too, because they're probably not getting this shit at home sometimes. No. But if they get into music and they can listen to an artist that they respect and they can learn something from it, like that's where I learned a lot of my politics was from music, right? Like, I don't know 100%. If we've ever talked about this, John, but it's like punk rock. I got into punk. I learned about politics, and I learned about things that like mattered to people outside of just myself. And hip hop is the same way. It's a big part of what this is.
I mean, I think growing up for me, I think that's the big thing. Like, as I got, you know, like I said, I got my first tape ever that I bought with my own money was that Public Enemy tape. And I didn't know what Chuck was talking about at the time, but as I got older and started to, go down this path of hip hop, I started to realize like, okay, people struggle worse than I do. Like my life is not that bad, but also at the same time, you know, growing up in the Midwest or in my family, my parents were not racist by any means, but there was definitely like, I could tell like my dad was very like, he's a Republican guy. So it's like, he's going for the better for himself. And like hip hop was my window into realizing like those guys were trying to tell us like we've got issues. Basically what I'm trying to say is like it made me realize we're all human beings, and we all have to do better for the greater good. And the devil that Ice Cube and like any of the 5%ers like in New York hip hop, so like Black Moon, J. Rue the Damager, EPMD, Wu-Tang Clan, they're not talking about white people in general. They're talking about the fucking man, which is who everybody in hardcore and punk rock, we're all talking about the same thing. It's like those in power happen to be rich white guys that don't give a fuck about any race. They don't give a fuck about them. They just care about themselves and their riches. So we all got to get on the same page. And that's what I think every single hip hop artist is trying to do. Not saying like, hey, all white people are bad. No. It's the rich white man that's fucking horrible because it's fucking everyone over. And I think that's the greatest thing. The gift that hip hop gave to me and punk and hardcore is like, it widened my eyes to just outside of my small little neighborhood and at a young age, it opened my eyes to like, hey man, there's issues in the world that are bigger that we all have to try to help remedy in any way we can.
Yeah. So I'm going to take it in a really heavy direction for my next track. And
this hasn't been heavy enough for you?
Oh, dude, it's about to get so much fucking maybe unnecessarily heavier. And it's going to be Sage Francis, Makeshift Patriot.
Melting pot seems to be calling the kettle black when it boils over, but only on our own soil. So the little boy holds a toy soldier and waits for the suit and tie to come home. We won't wait till he's older before we destroy hopes for a colder war to end. I get a close up of his head. Makeshift Patriot, the flag shop is out of stock.
Oh, great song.
Yeah. And I would say like that might have been like a little soiree from me into backpack rap without necessarily knowing what it was. But I remember like hearing that song post 9/11 and being like, this is the scariest shit I've ever heard, because I don't know how to collect what I'm hearing right now. Knowing like, you know, I'm a suburban kid that live, you know, like not necessarily questioning much at that point. Mm-hmm. And that was really where I started to like look at things slightly differently, was hearing Makeshift Patriot for the first time and really starting to like hear, okay, so the music that I listen to on the internet, like the songs that I'm downloading on LimeWire or the music that I'm listening to on the radio is not all that I have access to. And I remember being scared, but also like it kind of lit a fire under my ass, if that doesn't sound too terribly cheesy, of like, I need to find more of whatever this is. Like, I need to find more of this, this shit that carries this much weight, that has this much purpose. And I remember hearing that song and just being blown away at the content of what, like, he was openly saying, like, are you allowed to do this? Is this against the rules? Like, you know, like just being intimidated and scared, and also like super thirsty for more, for sure.
But that's the power of, like, I think any good song that's socio-political or conscious in any way, if it gets the listener to think more, then it's done its job. And it's the artist who wrote that is like, okay, I don't care if I make money off this song. I wanted to just get this message across. And if it, like it, what it did to you is exactly what it was supposed to do. And that's great. Yeah. That's great, because him calling out all that shit, it's like, it needs to happen. People need to do that. I've always thought that was funny. You know, bringing up that Sage Francis song is like, the people that scream patriotism as much as they do in this country are saying, I want freedom. I want this and this and this, but as long as it's on my terms, you know what I mean? I want it on my terms.
Yeah. And this is when like, and like Sage isn't the only one, but like, this was a time too, when like a lot of like traditionally punk labels and hardcore labels were starting to put out more hip hop music, which just makes sense. Like, we've talked about why already. We don't need to, you know, like I mean,
the thing is like, if you look at the early, you know, the early hip hop stuff. So going back to, like the Funky 4+1 and, Spoonie G, and even before that. So like, so like Treacherous 3 and all that shit, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5. If you look at the video for The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, they're trying to dress like punk rockers, because they saw, to them in New York City, because at the time, you know, hip hop was still primarily New York City. And in New York City, you had the birth of punk, you had the birth of hip hop. And both the punk scene, that's why the Beastie Boys, when they initially started, were a punk rock band, but then, you know, hip hop was being played at the punk clubs because they both felt this synergy together. There was no difference to them. The music might have sounded different, but like the approach and like what they were trying to do was very much similar. So you look at the video of The Message, and those dudes are kind of wearing like chains and shit, and like, you know, the whole nine, because they felt affinity to the punk thing that was going on in the Bowery.
Makes perfect sense to me. I mean,
yeah. So for Sage Francis, you know, after he left Anticon, which is a primarily super underground label, which is going to bring me to my next pick. But anyway, it's a super underground label. And him ending up on Epitaph, when that happened, that makes sense to me.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Makes sense 100%.
Yeah. So is are you saying your next one's an Anticon artist?
Yeah, it's I think it's the first. I'm not too entirely sure on this, and if there's someone out there listening that might know more about this than I do, I think I'm right on this. This is the first release on Anticon. It's a group called Deep Puddle Dynamics. And Deep Puddle Dynamics was made up of Dose One, Slug, who would go on to do Atmosphere, and there's two other guys. Anyway, they started this hip hop collective called Deep Puddle Dynamics, and they started off in Cleveland, but they splintered when Dose One moved to the Bay and started Cloud Dead with.
Is it Alias?
Yeah, Alias. That's it. Boom. So those guys moved to the West Coast, and Slug moved up to Minneapolis and started Rhymesayers. But Deep Puddle Dynamics, the song I'm picking from them is called The Candle.
Hey, ma, look at me, no form, never hammer the notebook. I'm not romantic, I have to man, it wasn't my last endeavor. The best of you, shut up. I lack the ability to pull myself back together. The sun will always be there to provide some inspiration. Verifying complex informers give me that warm feeling.
It's really great. The production on it is traditional boom bap, backpack shit. It starts off with Dose One, who's got like a really weird approach. He's like, I don't even know if I'd classify him as an MC, but he definitely is. But he has an approach that's very like theatrical.
Is it like that bus driver kind of thing a little bit?
No,
or
people will hear it when you play the track. He kind of talks like that. It's like really weird.
Okay.
But his verse is followed up by Slug, who obviously is extremely talented. But that crew, when they left the Ohio area and dudes went to the Bay and Slug went to whatever, those guys started Anticon, and Dose One and Ad Nostrum met up with Y. Do you know who Y is?
Oh yeah, when you say Anticon, like that's the first artist that pops in my head is
Okay.
Y.
So those three guys, Y, Ad Nostrum, and Dose One, started a group called Cloud Dead. Cloud Dead kind of pushed the envelope of hip hop into more of an avant-garde area, kind of like jazz. So there was like bebop and then hard bop. But then off of hard bop, you had guys like Ornette Coleman, Eric Dolphy, John Coltrane, who were all, they started doing free jazz. They pushed it into the avant-garde, which is kind of like how I look at like what Cloud Dead did. They took hip hop and instead of making it very traditional, either West Coast sounding or East Coast sounding, they just went in this whole weird fucking direction that it's hard to describe, but it's still hip hop adjacent. But anyway, it all started from Deep Puddle Dynamics.
I dig that like avant hip hop stuff. Like, do you listen to or have you heard Shabazz Palaces at all?
Oh yeah.
Like I consider that like an avant like Afro hip hop thing.
I would kind of put I would kind of put Cloud Dead kind of like not spearheading, but I mean at the beginnings of that avant-garde movement of hip hop for sure.
Cool. I've still got like 5 songs written here, but I think just based on what's been picked so far and to do something slightly different, I'm going to go with Blazing Arrow by Black Alicious.
Amazing Beja, Deja, hazy ways, my blazing arrow. The race that range from Asia way to Rio de Janeiro. A crazy crave, but look, today's the day that in a major way I make you say, oh look, he saved the day and also paved the way. Working my days like razor.
Fucking good shit.
And it's weird because my initial songs I had written down were all like early to mid 90s songs. And this is 2002. Like I remember this. I remember when this came out. I was either senior in high school or freshman in college, depending on what time of year it came out. But I was obsessed with this record when it came out. It kind of what you were saying, Donnie, about Kendrick. Like it wasn't the same. There's actually a lot of good hip hop at this time, but I remember there not feeling like there was as much of this kind of backpack rap sound. It had moved heavily. It's starting to get a lot more like electronic influenced hip hop at the time, right? Like at least in the circles.
Give me an example, Rod. What are you talking about?
Well, I don't know, like B.O.B. and stuff like that were coming out, and there was a lot of like synthesizers and stuff in hip hop, and like you know, I would even say like some people that maybe even fit into backpack rap genre were pushing away from sampling more into like maybe original compositions, and maybe they aren't original compositions, maybe they were sampling, but it didn't sound like sampling. And like Black Alicious is that old school, like it's samples, it's sample heavy, it's jazz influenced. There's some weird shit thrown in there, right? Like, I mean, the main sample in this song is a Harry Nilsson song.
Oh, cool.
And so like, you know, it's like whatever they get their fucking hands on and want to put in there, they do. I just like these guys because they always felt just like a modern version of everything else we've talking about from the 90s. It literally was just the guys listen to that stuff. The guys in Black Alicious obviously listened to all that New York golden era stuff, and they made their own version of it. Their flows are very similar to that stuff, right? It sounds like Tribe, or it sounds like, you know, Diggable Planets or whatever. It's got that cadence to it. It's very jazzy, but it just sounds a little more fresh because it's a little different. They're doing some weird shit in their songs.
What was this record? You said it was Blazing Arrow, the record, the second?
The record's Blazing Arrow. The song I chose is Blazing Arrow too, the title track. I could have gone a few different the single off of this was Make You Feel That Way, which was definitely more, I don't know if you guys know that song. It's a little like more like a pop song, frankly. It's not a pop song. It's hip hop, but it's definitely feels a little more like radio friendly, I guess. I
only knew Black Alicious from the record Naya. I never heard Blazing Arrow. I'm sorry.
Blazing Arrow. Yeah. It's great. I think you'll dig it. I mean, it's the next step from Naya. Like it's, you know, if you liked Naya, I think you'd like Blazing Arrow. A lot of people know Black Alicious from Alphabet Aerobics.
Yep.
They kind of do that. They have a song like that on Blazing Arrow too, kind of. It's called Chemical Calisthenics. That's a hard word to say. It's not quite as like goofy as Alphabet Aerobics is, but I mean, you're not going to hear it on Jimmy Fallon. But
yeah, I got to check that record out. I've never checked out Blazing Arrow. I think Naya was like where I drew the line. I shouldn't say drew the line. I didn't listen to anything after. I got to dive into that. I'm going to write it down.
Yeah. So that's my last one. Donnie, what's your fourth pick?
Dude, I'm going back and forth between these two, but I'm going to do this just because of the way that it ties into some of what we talked about. And I'm going to do Fuji La by the Fugees.
Yeah, in saloons we drink booze and battle rules to high noon bus rap tunes on flat spoons. Take no shorts like poo-poos. See Gucci's pop Gucci's for Gucci's and Lucci. Find me in my Mitsubishi eating sushi, bumping Fuji. Hey. Try to take the crew and we don't play.
Good one.
And I'm stoked on that one because I think it's, if you look at people like Lauryn Hill and Wyclef and what they've become versus where they started, when we talked a few episodes ago about genre shifting, Rod, like if you listen to some of like the later Wyclef albums, or you listen, you know, even to the Miseducational Lauryn Hill, compared to what they were doing in the score and like what the score was. So they were pretty big critics of Jeru the Damager.
They were. They had beef.
Yeah, they had some beef, which is kind of crazy. But I mean, like they went on, like this album went on to be nominated. It won Grammy for Best Rap Album the year that it came out, which is pretty nuts. And if you look at like this album as a whole, like I don't think that there is an underlying theme of story through this album, but it feels like it would be a story album from beginning to end. And it is a great fucking album.
It's got one of my favorite producers produced. I think the title track, the score, is produced by Diamond D. Mm-hmm. Diamond D is incredible production guy. He's part of the Digging in the Crates crew, which is Fat Joe, Showbiz and AG. I'm trying to think of Lord Finesse. So it's a bunch of people, and I think it's crazy because the score is, while it's the second Fugees record, it's obviously their biggest because of fucking Killing Me Softly became like the biggest song ever. But it's cool that Diamond D actually, like what you're talking about, winning a Grammy, he won a Grammy for it. Like he won a Grammy for this record. I think I don't know if he did the production on the whole record or just that song, but he definitely won a Grammy for it, which is fucking wild. And I think it's the only Grammy he won. I think there's some bad blood there too, because he won't talk about it much, but I don't know the whole story.
I don't know. They seem to have a beef with a lot of people. I think it's just part of what they do too.
Yeah.
Like I feel like they've got a lot of beef.
And I haven't listened to this record in fucking forever. Probably since it came out. I don't think I listened to it because once Killing Me Softly just got beat into the ground, I kind of gave up on it. But I did go back probably like a year ago and revisit their first record, which is called Blunted on Reality. Came out in 93. It's great because I remember seeing the video for their first single off that record is called Nappy Heads, and it used to be on Rap City all the time. And if you would have told me back then, if you would have been like, oh yeah, this group right here, they're going to put out a record in 96 and it's going to be like the biggest thing since sliced fucking bread, I would have been like, no way. Because it was like the Fugees back in 93, they were good. They were definitely good because Wyclef is really talented as a producer and Praz is a good MC and Lauryn Hill is a good MC and she's got great vocals. They were good, but definitely never would have thought. Never would have thought.
That opening track on that album, that opening track on the score, when Wyclef just starts screaming right out the gate, it's like, damn, this is strong. Like it's a great, like, it's almost a bummer because Killing Me Softly is, in my opinion, like the low point of this album because everything else is like, it's pretty fucking powerful.
It is.
And then you've got this random cover in here that, like, you know, it's fine. You know, it like, it kind of goes back to what you're saying, where it's just like, they just took the song and just recorded their own version over the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like they didn't do a lot to it. But the rest of the album is so good.
Fuji Law, though, that song alone, that song is great. And I honestly think, I wish that song would have got bigger than Killing Me Softly. But then again, Killing Me Softly is such a, like a kind of a touchstone soul song that there was no way that it was going to be massively huge.
Sure.
I'm glad you brought up the Fugees record because I have not, Donnie, I have not listened to that in forever. I'm gonna put it on my list to check out again.
Yeah, there you go. Now you got Kendrick. Now you got the Fugees. You got a bunch of shit to listen to.
Yeah, I got Blazing Arrow by Black Alicious Chip.
And we've got to go check out Deep Pole Dynamics and
then you got one more from me too.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it, John.
I wish, like, there's a couple things that I wish before I tell my fourth one. So Social Mischief have a song called Cab Fare, which they sampled the Taxi theme song, the show Taxi, and they could never release it as a single because Bob James, the guy that made the record, would not allow them to do it. But you can, for everyone listening, go to YouTube, type in Souls of Mischief Cab Fare. That's, if it was available on the streaming sites, I would have put it on my list. It's
John, you throwing out honorable mentions already? You already one step ahead. We're already throwing out honorable mentions.
I am. So I'm going to throw my honorable mentions in here now. So that's one of them. And then the second one is which is going to lead me into my fourth one. It's a freestyle done by an MC named Big L, who sadly was killed in 99 or 2000. And Jay-Z, they did a freestyle on this radio show in New York called Stretch and Bobbito. And it's one of the most, it's gone down in like hip hop lore as like one of the greatest freestyles ever. And it's also Jay-Z. I want to say it's one of Jay-Z's first appearances outside of, like, Jay-Z did a group with his friend, or was a part of his friend's crew who was signed in the 80s, late 80s. And they kind of did like a Houdini type thing. And Jay-Z was on that. And it's all right. But this is like the first appearance of Jay-Z as we know him. And this was like in, I want to say 95 or 93. Anyway, if you can find it, people that are in the know, like hip hop heads, know this freestyle. It's fucking incredible. It's one of the best things in the world. Anyway, so those are my two things, which lead me into my final one, which is a track by a guy named OC. And his song's called Time's Up. And it's from his 94 album Word Life.
To me, this is just a scrimmage. I feel I'm stoned. Not cause of Bopper where my cap cocked. The more emotion I put into it, the harder I rock. Those who pose lyrical but really ain't true, I feel.
So how OC, I want to say, was a part of the boot camp clique of Gangstar, J-Rue, and all that stuff. I want to say he was part of that. I'm not entirely sure, so don't hold me to that. But definitely DJ Premier produced some stuff for him. And I think Premier produced this track, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, Time's Up. The first time I heard Time's Up was, okay, so flash forward to when I discovered the Source magazine, and I used to read it a lot as a kid. In the back of magazines, for those younger people that are listening, if there is any, there used to be classified ad section. And in this classified section, there was a guy who was selling tapes of a show called Stretch and Bobbito, which was a college radio show that was on KCRW, I want to say is what it was, in New York City. There's a whole documentary, if people want to check it out. It's called Stretch and Bobbito, Radio That Changed Lives. I highly suggest you check it out. They were hugely important in getting the Wu-Tang Clan signed, Nas, Biggie, everyone. They were just like very important. This guy in the back of the Source would he would record it and he would sell the tapes so people could collect the Stretch and Bob show. And so I, as a kid, I must have been, 12, 11, wrote out an envelope and just stuffed they were $5 a tape. And I stuffed $5 in an envelope, just kind of on a wish and a prayer back then. Like, are you going to see it? It's cash in an envelope. Who knows what's going to happen? And sure enough, this guy would send me tapes, and I would just always, anytime a new Source every month, I would write him a letter and I would get all the episodes that I wanted. He'd send me a list. It's kind of like tape trading. He had a list of all the episodes. So that's how I heard the Big L and Jay-Z freestyle. That's how I heard about Nas and Wu-Tang before they had singles out or even a record deal. I knew all of that shit. And one of the things that they would play a lot in 94 was OC's Time's Up. And it's one of my favorite produced hip hop songs. The beat is so simple, but it works so well. The piano riff that's in there and the drum loop is great. Not to mention him as an MC. Oh, dude, it's so good. And it's all because of Stretch and Bob that I heard this song. If anybody's never seen the Stretch and Bob Ito documentary, Radio Changed Lives, I highly suggest it. Those guys are two of the most important figures in New York hip hop ever. They have a radio show now on Apple Music you can check out. That's cool. But that documentary kind of gives you the groundwork of like what they did.
Something that comes up on this podcast is like references and songs to things that like mediums or activities or things that like young people don't understand or don't even know. But this is like next level where it's like, it's not in a song. It's like in life, the idea of tape trading or bootlegging or writing to a magazine to get something, like that whole idea is so foreign to anybody like under the age of 30. Not even that they don't quite get what we mean. They probably have no idea what you're talking about with that stuff. Yeah. John, but it was so common in not just hip hop, right? But that was like a thing everywhere. Like tape trading was a big phenomenon that would happen in like magazines and
I did that
just
shit
bootlegging stuff. And
like when it got to, around the time when I started playing in bands, I would trade demos. Like I had a list of demos, someone else had a list of demos, and I'd trade demos.
Yeah. I've heard so many stories of people basically having like music pen pals back then too, which it wasn't about writing your pen pals, about you knew somebody on the other side of the country and you traded tapes. I can get this tape, you can get this tape, and we trade constantly. Like I'm making a dub copy of something I just got that isn't even for sale where you live, and we're just sending stuff back and forth like that. You had to learn about music somehow before the internet, right? And it wasn't all on the radio. If you were into any kind of underground music, you had to read some magazine or a zine or have somebody to trade tapes with, or somebody like a cool older sibling, right? Or like somebody at a record store who knew their shit that could get you that shit somehow. Like to get a physical, because the only way to listen to music was physical shit. And the only way to get physical shit was to have somebody give it to you, right? You couldn't just couldn't go online and order something. That wasn't a thing.
The instant gratification now of being able to go on the internet and go to YouTube and be like, oh, well, I want to hear this band's demo, or go to Bandcamp to do that. Like it's like instantaneous. Back then you had to you read it. You guys know this. You read it and then you had to wait.
Yep.
Which was like fucking torture. I still remember.
And you had to usually pay some kind of money, even if it was like the postage or something, like, which is also a risk because you hadn't heard it yet. So it could fucking suck, right? You could end up paying money for this thing that's not good too. Like
I became very label loyal. So if I liked a group on a label, I would try to dive into what else is on the label. And Rap-A-Lot Records, who did the Ghetto Boy stuff, had a lot of shit that wasn't that good, but I bought it. And it was like, like you were saying, Rod, you had to throw down money, and especially buying CDs or tapes back then. It's funny, CDs were way more expensive than tapes were, even though CDs probably cost less to make than a cassette tape cost to make. CDs were like, you had to spend like $18 on a CD. So it was a fucking gamble. So when I walk in and I buy like, there's this guy on Rap-A-Lot called Gangsta Nip. And I was like, all right, I want to check out the Gangsta Nip record, Houston guy, like part of that scene. And it was fucking letdown. And it sucked. It's just like such a bummer.
It was a bummer.
I spent $20 and $20 back in the 90s to a kid.
That's a whole week's worth of work.
Fucking A, man. It was such a bummer. But the flip side.
That's how Donnie felt about the Alice DJ CD that he bought.
It's true. Yeah. Better Off Alone was definitely the only hit on that one.
Going back to this OC song, Time's Up was such a great track, such a great single, that it was nerve-wracking to go buy the full record. But I knew, like, okay, well, Premier's behind this, as well as a bunch of other New York producers, so it's got to be good. And it turned out the record's great. It's one of the classic backpack hip-hop records, like underground hip-hop records. It's Word Life is a great record.
I'm also glad we could give the kids listening, which I do know there's a few, but they're the kids of people, other people I know who are forced to listen, probably in the car. But hey, you kids listening, it used to be a whole different ball game listening to music and getting music. So
yeah, I do have a couple more honorable mentions, but I'll let you guys do yours.
Well, let's do honorable mentions real fast. Let's just ramble these off real quick. I've got a couple I'll just throw out real fast. But
throw them out, Rod.
Bucktown by Smith & Wesson.
One of my favorites. That was on my list.
Was it? I'll throw another one out who's kind of a newer one to me and just a smaller artist, but she's like Guru discovered her and like J. the Damages, like scene and stuff. But Bahamadia, You Know How We Do.
That's a forgotten one. I haven't thought about that in forever.
Yeah, she's rad. That's great songs.
Mine are pretty safe and mainstream. One of mine is Passing Me By the Far Side.
That's fucking great. It's
simple. Yeah, totally.
It's fucking incredible. The production on Passing Me By and Other Fish, the way the samples are placed in those songs and where they're at, and especially in Passing Me By, there's like obvious, you can hear it if you listen closely. Well, you don't really have to listen closely, but you can hear like a needle drop on the sample.
For sure.
Like, it spins around. It's like you hear that pop. Mm-hmm. And then you put the fucking drum beat behind it, and that first fucking verse. That song is so good.
Yeah, that one is, it's a big baseline one for me. And then my other one, which again, it's super easy, super surface, but it's KRS-One. MCs act like they don't know.
I'll give you two more, just real quick. EPMD's Crossover from 92 from their Business Never Personal record. Fucking another example of great placement of samples. It's a song about hip hop becoming pop and how EPMD is like, we're always going to stay hardcore, underground, but the hook is a blatant pop hook, but it works. I don't know. And then after that, that song was produced by Eric Sermon, who's part of EPMD, and another one produced by Eric Sermon, which is Redman's Tonight's the Night off his, What the Album record from 92. That one has the use of the samples in that. It's like a horn sample and a string section, like crescendo over this hard hip hop beat is so great. So Tonight's the Night and Crossover, those are the two. And then I'll fucking put this shit.
Yeah, man, we dropped some songs on this one.
This one was deep.
You want to recap, Donnie?
Yeah, I'll throw out the list. Okay, so first track, Rod, you had first pick for the first time ever, which was Mr. Abadina by Del Funky.
Mr. Dabalina. It's Mr. a hard one to say.
Yeah, for sure. By Del Funky Homo Sapient. Hip Hop by Dead Prez. Come Clean by Ja Rule the Damager. Doomsday by MF Doom. Backpack Freestyle by Kendrick Lamar. Third Base with The Gas Face. Mos Def with Mathematics. Sage Francis with Makeshift Patriot. Deep Puddle Dynamics, the song is The Candle. Black Alicious, Blazing Arrow. The Fugees with Fuji La. And then OC with Time's Up.
Fucking A. That's pretty solid.
How to make a mixtape.
John, thanks for being a guest. And man, I think we made the right choice. You are knowledgeable on this topic. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you for letting me nerd out about, like, I love nerding out and talking about music, and if it's especially something that I'm really passionate about and really love, yeah, I will go deep like I just did. Yeah.
And everybody go check out Amusement, the stuff that's out there currently on your Bandcamp probably, and then look out for stuff from Spares in the future as well. I will link it up. You got anything else to say, Donnie?
John, it was great to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was great meeting you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the lesson that I wanted. That was the you learned me today for sure, to say the least. Thank you, dude. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, John.
See ya.